Alright, time to get back on the heads here. So these are four, 50 casting panheads. So we got to figure out our install heights for our valves. We got all the porting and all the other stuff done on it now. So I had to go dig through my drawer over here for my old information on sifting stuff. So that's about halfway down the pile. So this is the cam spec sheets for sifting cams, original stuff. So this is from the probably from the 80s. So anyway, this is the you got to check your coil bind height here. That's this dimension here. You got to check your retainer to your valve guide. And when you put a valve seal in there, you got to add that in also. And then that's how you make sure you got clearances. And the last thing you do is check your valve to valve to make sure the two valves don't hit each other. So that's how you do all this stuff. So if you want to read about it, freeze frame that and do a computer printer, however you want to do it. Okay, so these are the cam specs for Sportster. These are for Big Twin. So we're dealing with Big Twin. So this information is not easily available. So he has a 440 cam. There's two different versions of the 440. Looks like there's a 109 and a 112. Either way. So all I care about is our TD lift, which is this number. So 440 lift cam. So we got 200 is our high number. So that's the only one I care about. The 179 I don't care about. This one has 215 and 200. That's the one that's going to be the problem one. The 200 by 180 is less of a problem. So you got to figure that out. So they want 470 spring coil bind. I don't know what the hell that's supposed to be. 520 is the clearance you need. So they're figuring 470 you need clearance. That's 30 above the max lift. Whatever. I don't do it that way. So anyway, all I care about, we got 215 by 220 by 200 is my valve to valve. We got 440 lift. So I'm not sure what the 470 giving you 30 thou extra. I get 50 thou extra, and they got another 50 over here for coil bind. So it looks like they're giving you 30 on top of 50. That'd be called 80 in my book. I only give it 50 extra. All right, so there you go. So this stuff all gets buried underneath where it doesn't get damaged. So it's down here pretty deep in the pile. That's a good place for it. It'll take a while before the damage gets that deep in my box. I don't think you'll be able to replace that cam sheet card anymore, unless you copied off my YouTube video. Okay, so basically we got to figure out what we got. Okay, this is our rear head. These are our rear valves. Big R on it. So all you gotta do is you lift your intake valve 220, 215 up that way. You lift this one up 200. And if you got clearance between the valves, about at least 30 thou, 50 is better, but 30 minimum, you can run it. So you gotta hold the head like that so the valves don't fall out. So you can measure that. The next problem is you gotta measure our retainer clearance on here. That's how far you got clearance from here to here. And shorten the valve guide to gain that one. Then we got to measure our coil bind clearance. So that's where you take your spring and you coil bond it. Like that. Put it in the vise, crush it, measure it. I already know it's 880, 890. I already measured it before. So use one of those two numbers and go from there. So that's how we're going to do it. You add a bunch of numbers together in your head and you got a clearance. If you can't add in your head, then you got to write it down. If you're waiting for me to write it down, it ain't gonna happen. You have to do it yourself. My brain still works, so I don't have to write it all down. Make sure you're at least halfway in there so it don't pop up and hit in your face when you're doing this, which would hurt. Alright, so you go like that. Take your scale, you measure what you got between. So my scale on this valve looks like about 875 to 880. going to call it 880. So like I already measured all of these. That's pretty much where they're all at. One is a little bit better than the other, so this must be the better one. Alright, so that's our numbers. Now the lower collar used to have a titty like that that stuck up. I cut that off to make room for valve seal clearance, because we need valve seal clearance. There's two different valve seals out there. You got the good ones, you got the crappy ones. So the crappy ones that come in all the gasket sets these days, and the good ones they don't sell. So these are the crappy ones here. These are the good ones here. So the reason they're good and crappy and good is because when you take that and put on top of that, your overall clearance is the same as this one. If you take that and put on top of that, see how much higher the clearance is? So that's that much valve lift you lose. We don't have that extra clearance to use on a shovel unless you want a stock 400 lift cam. If you want a 500 inch cam, it ain't gonna work. So these are James, these are Cycle Gaskets, the blue ones. There's some more blue ones over here. These are 80 inch size, because they don't have a 74 inch size. So that would be 9/16 guide versus 5/8 guide. That's another problem. They don't make seals for old bikes. So the guides are 5/8, so you take big ones. And you have 74 inch guides. You take small ones. See? There you go. That's the difference. And you got a valve cutter for cutting the guide down. That one's for 5/8. Don't need. So I'm gonna need 4 of these at least. Need a driver. Need some parts and pieces. And that's how you do it. So we need to make room in this motor for clearance. So this is a 440 lift cam. If you put an A-grind Andrews cam on your bike, which I like, you're going to be at 475, 480 lift. So it'll be more than 440. So let's see if we'll make sure we got this clearance for that kind of number. I'll probably want to have to shorten these guides about 30 thou, but we'll see. So every time you do a head, it's different. So I don't know what I am right now. So basically, first thing I'm going to do is check our valve to valve. So this is the intake over here. So we just measure how deep it is. We're about 800. Just under 900 on my location. So if you go considerably under 700, it'll be right there. That's about 220 left, 215. Go over here. This one's just above 900. Let's go down to 700. There's about 690. And you look over here and you see your clearance. If you look in there, you can see there's a big gap between those valves. That gap right there means you can run the bike, you can run this cam without a problem. The valves are sunk deep enough, it doesn't matter. Alright, so that is a good thing. So we have to worry about valve to valve. Now we just got to worry about the other stuff. Pistons are always cut deep enough, you don't have to ever worry about pistons. Okay, this is our intake valve. So you take a lower collar, like that. See how much guide you got to work with. So the seal takes up 300 thou. We're about 340, 350. When you look at it this way. So we got enough room to cut it down if we need to, without having to do anything on the collar. It's different what we got. And you take your spring in here, might make it a little easier for us to do this on camera. Just go ahead and put the upper collar in there. Grab a couple of keepers. Make sure you're in there all the way. When you measure this, you want to make sure you got the keeper orientated correctly. So you want to make sure you got the keeper groove right here, because you will get a little bit rocked this way a little bit. It's going to be pretty tight this direction. You shouldn't have much rock in your valve keepers anyway. These ones are pretty tight. When you have a mismatched keeper groove in here, the valve stem, then you got bad keepers. And don't be surprised if there's a lot of bad ones out there, because there is. If the keepers do not fit everything, the valve can fall out, and it does. So you pull it all together like that. You want to make sure when you put tension on it, you don't have much rock in here. See, when I got full tension on this here, where it's pulled tight, I don't have hardly any rock at all. If I go like this on it, you can see it's got a little rock. That's because I don't have the tension on the keeper holding it. So it's pretty tight. Ideally, it'd be nice if you pull it tight and stay tight, but that doesn't always, they don't work that way. So these are Harley keepers, Harley collars with PM valves, so this combination works. Other combinations do not work. So you always want to make sure they work correctly. It doesn't hurt to check all your keepers, because there might be some bad ones mixed in. Bad ones are when the valve's like a little ding-dong, it goes back and forth. Rattle back and forth. So that one locks in tight there also when you pull against it. So these ones are all stock keepers, so pull these out of my secret stash. So these are all pretty good. Like I said, if you put this all up in there and the valve goes dong 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 like a ding dong over a bill, then that's when the thing will drop out on you. Not a good thing. Okay, this one's all fine. Harley parts fit for some reason, don't know why. Okay, so you want to make sure everything's in there square and flat. And you take your 6-inch scale here, which has these numbers in here. So these little fine lines here that you can't see, those are 10th thou apart. So you just measure. So our installed height right now is about 370 or so. I don't know if I got that where you can see it or not, but anyway. You can see how it's just under the 400 number. Okay, so now you gotta do some math. These are 880. We want 50 thou clearance. So that means you go up to 930. Got that? 930. And we add in our cam lift, 440. We go a little higher now. We're going to put 470 in there. So now it's technical. You got to have a calculator in your head. So you got 930. If we add 470 to that, it makes it easier for adding. So that's 1.4 inches. Did you get that? We have 1,375. So we don't have quite enough coil bind to run those big of a numbers on it. So this motor is not clearance for a big ass cam. It's only clearance for the 440 cam. Because if we take 30 number off that, we got our clearance. So these valve springs here are not going to work because they're too tall. So you've got to have recessed collars on here, or you got to sink things down deeper. Now if you can sink things down deeper, you take the valve guide right here and you cut the shoulder down to gain your clearance. That's how you would do it. Or you can take that big lip on the head right there, you can cut that down and sink the guide deeper that way. We already did the valve job, so I'm not going to pull the valve guide out and do that. So the option is to cut the shoulder off the guide, sink it way down in there like that. So that's the option that way. The other one, let's figure out what valve retainer clearance we got. So that's just a matter of doing this. And you measure the gap from here to here. So if you're going to run a 1/2 inch length cam, you need a 1/2 inch. If you want 50 thou clearance, you need 50. Easy on a valve seal, 30 is fine. So we're not running that. We're going to run a 470 lift cam with 30 makes it a 1/2 inch lift. The seal is 100 to 125. These days it's more like 125. So that means we need at least 625 clearance in here, 5/8 of an inch. This scale is a 1/2 inch thick. And if you look at the gap in there, we got probably close to 3/16 in there, so we're plenty. So we don't have any clearance problem at the top of the guide to this retainer. We're all right on that. So that part will clear. The problem is we don't have the coil bind clearance. That's the problem. So we either don't make the heads available for longer clearance by using these springs, or you got to get different springs that are shorter. Crane springs are shorter. They're usually down there in the 830 area to 840, pretty common. I have some down in the teens. So if you go down to an 820, I mean a 420, god damn it, 820 coil bind. We're at 880 right now. Obviously you gain 60 thousandths. That will give us what we need. So then you'll be able to run probably close to a 1/2 inch lift cam in this thing and not hit on that. So anyway, those are your different numbers. So right now we got to double check to make sure that we have what we need. So I'm going to go find me some springs and I'll be back.